let's go through the steps on how to install Windows Server 2019. We're going to actually go to the internet and download the free trial, which is a full 180-day use of this operating system. You can then apply a license key once you've purchased it. But let's go through the steps on how to download it, how to install it, and how to do basic configuration onto your computer. So let's jump onto my computer and let's go through that. So we've now logged into our browser on our computer. So what we're going to search for is download Windows Server 2019. So this is going to be a trial version of Windows Server 2019 that we're going to be using that is fully usable for up to 180 days. And that is, you can get that from the Microsoft website. So let's click on search. And what you'll see is there's a few things here. So we can download the trial, but if you are in a corporate environment, if you already are, say, a developer or something like that, you can actually get your Windows Server, of course, by purchasing it through a volume license, through Microsoft, through a vendor, through an MSDN if you're part of a developer network. But for the purpose of this demo, we're going to be doing it via a trial version, which is fully usable. And this is something that you may want to be using and testing first. It's always good to test it first before doing it in prod. But we're going to go and try Windows Server 2019 on Microsoft Evaluation Center. So right in here, there's a few things, a few different options. We're going to select ISO and we're going to say continue. You're going to put in some information here that is relevant to your organization. If you're doing this at home, you put in some information that is relevant to you at home. But generally your first name, your last name, your company name, which could be home. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to fail you if you put incorrect information. We then say continue, English, and download. And here is the ISO. So you'll see that it has started downloading in the bottom. Now the download is quite large, so it can take a little bit of time to download. But once we download it, we're going to log into our ESXi host and upload it into a data store. So let's just let that do its thing, give it a bit of time, and we'll check back once that is finished. So that download should now have completed. We've now got to upload that Windows Server 2019 into a VMware data store. So on whatever computer, whether it be Windows or Mac, the process is really exactly the same. You can choose to do this by connecting directly into vCenter or directly into an ESXi host. So either the ESXi host IP address or connecting to vCenter. So we're going to go directly into an ESXi host. We're logging in as root and then putting in your password. You're then presented with all of the VMs that are running or that exist within that ESXi host, all the VMs that are being managed by this ESXi host. The first thing that we now need to do is get that ISO that we just downloaded added into the VMware environment before we can even create a VM. So go into the storage area, and what we're going to do is we need to upload that ISO into a data store of some kind. Okay, so you've got a number of data stores. I've got two, as you can see right here. My main data store for this demo is ProdNAS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on ProdNAS and select Browse. Now from within here, I'm presented essentially the contents of my data store. I've got a folder in here called ISOs, which I've created. And this is where I keep all of my ISOs so that I can go and build VMs as I need to. So what is a good practice is to have some sort of a folder in a data store that contains a whole bunch of data, software, ISOs, things like that. So if you don't have an ISOs folder, create one. You can just select the ProdNAS folder, say create directory. So all we do from here, select the ISOs folder and click on upload. I'm going to navigate to the folder that contains my ISO. Now I'm on a Mac. If you're on a Windows, you're going to be presented with Windows Explorer. Navigate now to your Windows Server 2019 ISO, which is this one right here. And now select it and click on open. That is now going to start to upload that file into this location on the data store. It may take a little bit of time depending on your network speed, but we'll just let that do its thing and we'll check back once it's finished. So the ISO will now be uploaded, which is all good. So we can now close that. Then the next step is now to go back into virtual machines and we go and create the actual VM. So what we want to do is we want to create a VM right up the top here. We want to select create a new virtual machine. We'll give it a relevant name because it's just for my test. I'm just going to call it test. You obviously give it a name that is going to be meaningful for what you're going to be using this server for. You want to select the compatibility mode that is relevant to your environment. If you have multiple ESXi hosts and some are earlier than 6.7 and you want the ability to be able to move this Server 2019 VM between hosts, select the compatibility version that is most relevant to what you've got. So if you've got an ESXi host that is in 6, select 6, and that will work in 6.5 and 6.7. But if you select 6.7, then you won't be able to move that VM to a ESXi host that is earlier than 6.7. The OS family will be Windows. The OS version, now because 2019 didn't exist when this version of 6.7 was released, it doesn't show up in my list, but it's not a problem. This is really just to provide some default settings for your building of your operating system. So you can leave it as 2016, which is the latest one here. Select the data store that you want to use. I'm going to be using my ProdNAS data store. This is where it's going to be saved. This will provide you some defaults for your Windows server. So you can customize this. You can add more CPU, add more RAM. You can add more hard drive space. So in my case, I want to have a 80 gigabyte hard drive rather than the 40, but you can change this at a later stage without problem. Now, what you want to do is, it's easy if you have the ISO mounted as soon as you boot up this VM for the very first time. So what I like to do is under the CD DVD section right here, I'll go and navigate to data store ISO file. It will then bring up my data store browser, and I'm now going to navigate to that Windows Server 2019 ISO, which we downloaded and uploaded onto here. I select that ISO that we uploaded and click on select, ensuring that connect is ticked as well. Next, gives you a bit of a summary, making sure it's all okay. So really, when now I power on this VM, it will detect that I've got a CD DVD drive turned on, that the ISO is where the source is, and then it'll mount that ISO and then start the installation. So we can now say finish. So here is my new server right here. So what we can do right here is power it on, and I'm going to go into the console to see what is going on during this install. And the loading of the files is now commencing. So this is a good sign. If you can see this, it means that the ISO has been discovered and that Windows Server 29 installation is now beginning. If you're not able to see this, then something has gone wrong, or perhaps your ISO itself is corrupted. As long as you can get to this screen, we're in a good position. So from here, we can say next, we can say install now. Select which version of the operating system you want to be installing. I'm going to say data center evaluation, and I want the desktop experience, which is a full graphical environment. Accept the terms and conditions. I'm going to say custom, and just making sure that this is my hard drive. So if everything has worked okay, it should say the size of the drive that you created when you were building that VM, when you were building the shell, which is 80 gigs. So I've selected that, and I'm going to go click on next. So now the installation will begin. So it's going to do a number of things in the background, copying the files and starting to get the installation ready. So let's just leave that. It may take a little bit of time. And through the magic of the internet, we are now done. It's going to ask you to put in a password once the installation is finished for your administrator. So go ahead and put that in, making sure that it is a complicated password, and then some final settings will be done in the background. And now you're presented with the primary screen. So you can now do Control-Alt-Delete on your keyboard, and now you throw in your password. If you do have trouble with the keyboard doing Control-Alt-Delete, you can always go into the actions area up the top here, go in Guest OS and send keys Control-Alt-Delete. So we are now in a fully operational logged in 2019 environment. It's detected obviously my network, so I want to say that I want this server to be discoverable. And Server Manager has popped up, so you can go and start to configure this server as need be. Of course, you go and connect it to an adequate IP range, give it an IP address, etc. But you'll see that in the bottom, this particular version is evaluation, and it's valid for 180 days. But if you have purchased the full version via whatever method, then you're good to go. But that is really the basic steps right there.